So Helene is a creative director with a very long and successful advertising career. At 60, when she's not painting in her studio, she's devoting her time to championing female talent. Are any of you familiar with the 3% Conference? Okay. Just very briefly, I'm sure Helene will cover this as well, but the 3% Conference was formed about 7 or 8 years ago?
Yeah, about 7 years.
Yeah, and really the goal of this conference was there was research done that showed that only 3% of the people in creative positions within the ad industry were women. And so the 3% Conference was formed to change that. And actually they've been quite successful in a short time. They are up to figures of about 11%. So we're getting there. We're inching our way to where we want to be. So Helene has actually spoken at the 3% Conference on issues like returnships, also about the absence of women in award shows, and on ageism, advertising's other little ugly secret. She was also at Cannes last summer talking about marketing to the 50-plus age segment with Ketchum, Vibrant Nation, and the UK Flamingo Group. Informed by her own circumstances and dismayed by the disproportionate number of women marginalized at a critical earning period of their life, Helene had the idea for creatives who struggle to re-enter the agency environment after a long absence. And in 2015, at the 3% Conference in New York, she launched a beta of her Returnship program in partnership with an agency called Sapient Nitro and General Assembly. The program was a huge success, and frankly, I read about it and said, I need to call this woman, and we chatted, and here we are today. So we're really happy to have you here, and turn it over to Helene. Welcome.
I assure you the honor is all mine. I can't tell you how thrilled I am to be here, to be invited here, and to see this room full of great women. I'm so happy. It's something that when I started out, there were no women in the conference rooms, none. I was the only one. It was back in the mid-'80s, and actually it started out earlier than that. But that's when I actually got a position as a creative director. And eventually got to the point where there were more and more women. But then I started to see them go away again. And I thought, there's something not working here. So that's part of what I'm going to address. So thank you, Kristen and Tracy, for inviting me to be here. So kind of what we touched on is that 5 years ago, my copywriting partner, Kat Gordon, called me up and she says, you know, I'm really fed up about how few women creative directors there are in the business. So I've decided to mortgage my home, rent a hall, and throw a conference. Will you talk? So I came in and I moderated a panel on award shows. I had just picked up a whole slew of bling and was pretty proud of myself on a Super Bowl campaign that I had the privilege of driving when I was at DDB in LA. And so Super Bowl is probably like the quintessential award thing you can go for. If you're doing Super Bowl, you're going to end up with something. And it's so male dominated, and I had to fight so hard to keep my presence relevant. It was my client, but of course once it got high profile, it got like everybody glommed onto it. And it was turning into a guy's game all the time, and I just had to keep pushing back. And it's like that's one of the things that I like. The reason I like to address these issues is because I want the generations behind me to sort of understand that you can't rest. It's like things turned around. There was a time when there were lots of women, and then there weren't, and then it's like, what's going on? The Super Bowl was part of what did it, because it became a male-dominated category, and women were just naturally excluded. It's like, you go work on the tampons, and then guys, let's get some beer and pizza and bring it. Anyway, I admired Kat's courage to sort of call out an injustice and do something about it. So then when she called me back to talk on ageism, knowing that I was going through this because I was trying to relocate myself from Los Angeles, which is like heavy broadcast. I had this great reel, to San Francisco, where people go, what? If it's not on the web, I don't want to see it. So I thought it would be an easy transition, and I was quite surprised to see that it wasn't. And a part of it is like this, chasm of technology, but also there was some ageism that sort of came to play, I think, a little bit. People sort of thought, well, I don't really know what to do with you. You're interesting, but, I just can't. And it came to my attention that what I needed is an opportunity to be able to prove to people what I can bring to the party. And that just doesn't happen when you're just walking around knocking on doors and trying to get informational interviews. I was just like another pathetic thing that you wanted to get out of your office because it reminded you of where you might end up, So alone, you're just a bad story. And I thought, what, this needs to be a movement. This needs to be bigger. If I create a movement, people will run towards it instead of running away from me. And I thought, I'm not the only one who's going through this. I saw so many of my friends who were freelancing, and it starts out great. Well, you go have a baby, and then you don't quite get back in because you've got this crazy schedule, and nobody's flexible in the business. You got to be there brainstorming till 3 a.m. And so you figure, well, I'll just freelance for a while, and that's great because you got all your buddies, you got calls going, everything's just great. Then you hit 50, a lot of the business starts to kind of shrink down, and you can't quite figure out why. And the reason is that we forget, as we age, our network ages. The people that you're counting on to give you your assignments age out. They get promoted up if they're lucky. They get tossed out if they take a break or are not so lucky. It happens, and it's hard to get back in. So you'll find yourself in freelancing. If you go for too long, you'll hit a dry spot at a really critical moment in your life. If you're 50 and you're starting to tap into your retirement savings to pay for the muffler change or whatever, the heater, you're in trouble because people are living a long time, and you've got to find a way to get back in, and you need to be earning money, really big money when you're in your 50s to make up for that long life you're going to live retired. And I thought, if we don't wake up as an industry and start addressing this, there are going to be a lot of people, little grandmothers living under bridges somewhere. You got to do something. And there's one thing that I know is women are fantastic for looking out for each other. And the solidarity that I feel is genuine and so appreciated. And I've always had people, do good things, good deeds towards me. I've been incredibly lucky in my career and my life, and so it's time to sort of pass it forward. So at the end of my talk, when I was talking on ageism, I floated out the idea of the Returnship program based on sort of my frustrations. And this one woman shot up and said, I'm in, count me in. And this was Carlene Mejana from Sapient Nitro, which was good because I had no idea how I was going to do this. I'm a creative director. I'm used to having an army of smart account people behind me and then sort of say, like, be here, do this, And I come up with the idea, and I thought, okay, this is great. I've got somebody who's in HR, actually knows what they're doing, because I'm totally out of my field. So together we sort of figured out, what does an agency need? And then I was sort of like, well, what does a creative want? And we actually ended up sort of pushing it through beyond creative. They ended up taking on 3 candidates, actually, and one of them is an account service. So let's just say this was the beginning of something big, and so it's a new way to bring back talent. Not explode? Yes, okay. So we all know that diversity, Margaret Hefferman says it's a form of political correctness. Isn't a form of political, but an insurance policy. The idea of diversity is an important one. We made a lot of progress since the Batman days, and as a result, we do better creative work, because I think the more diversity you have in an environment, the more variety of thoughts you have, and the more you can influence each other. And to me, that's always been an important factor. As a matter of fact, when I was a creative director, I would always look for what I call double majors. If someone had to rely on advertising to be their only creative outlet, they were going to have their heads blow up after a few years. You've got to be able to separate the two and feed one into the other. In other words, when you're working in an advertising agency, you're under contract. You know, you're being paid for your ideas, you have a job to do. It's not the same as being the author of a painting and saying, you want it, you buy it. You don't want it, don't buy it. It's lazy, I don't care. You have a contract to fulfill. So you can't use that as your creative outlet and come out sane at the end of it. Those are all the people who walk around saying, I never tell my kids to do this for a living, you know. Those are the ones who are never able to figure out that balance. So I always encourage people to go on and do other things. So we know that diversity in itself is actually had several different applications. It's diverse. So we started working on gender diversity, and as we can see, we've done quite well with that. And then back in the 60s, we started addressing race as well, and I think we've done quite well with that, but we can do better. And now the new diversity is the generational diversity, and that is because there's so many of us generationally challenged people around. The baby boom itself has just made a real boom for the hair color industry. So let's see, part of why we got into trouble is because we have these sort of assumptions that we've had in place for quite some time and never really bothered to look at again. And they don't really apply anymore. So one of them is that there's an assumption that, the 30s is when you're going to do your big career wave, so you're going to make your big moves then. We know that's also the time when women leave to go have babies. That's kind of an awkward timing. So that doesn't really work out very well. That full-time and FaceTime are the only ways to go about doing business. Well, that's not very flexible if you've got children you got to pick up at 5, or parents you have to take care of, or whatever. So, could be a problem. That people are only motivated by money. I know for me, I remember one time somebody asked me how much I was making, and I didn't really know, and they thought I was trying to scam them, And I said, no, I honestly just didn't pay attention. I mean, it's not that I don't care. I think people should be paid what they're worth for what they're doing. Absolutely. And I have fought like crazy to get decent salaries, and I've been ruthless. But it's not the thing that drives my reason to go somewhere. And I think that a lot of women are like that. It's a little deeper than this. Part of it is, the aspect of the motivation of what you're going to do, and does it matter, and do you relate to it, Women approach business differently, and I've always appreciated that and thought it's an important character trait to retain. I think women should behave differently than men in business. I think we bring another facet to business that men don't have and didn't have. And I like the mix of the two. I think it's very important. I've cried in meetings. I don't care. I am a woman. I'm not going to try to change it. I'm not going to try to be something I'm not. I do wear pants all the time, though. And the last thing is that, a career has to be continuous and linear. So suddenly when you have a resume gap, somebody looks at you and says, well, what's wrong with you? So what you end up with, if you follow all of these sort of beliefs, is you end up with something that looks like that. It doesn't look like this, right? That's a problem. All right. So, one of the things that's, you see, only 40% of women are successful in that kind of model. And I kind of touched on the reasons why that would make sense. And it's not because they're not working hard enough. So it seems to me that a place at the table, which we were so generously given some time back, is great, but it's not enough. What we really need to do, it's time now, we've been in it long enough, we need to create an environment that better mirrors the reality of our lifestyles, our priorities, and our goals. And it doesn't look like that slide before. So one of the things that this program tries to address is that reality that there are natural events that occur that take you in and out, and therefore, and most of the time it's women who are doing this. Women are the caretakers of everybody almost all the time. And so women get disproportionately affected by these events. And then if we don't build an on-ramp for them to get back in, you're basically shutting down the industry to women over a long period of time. If you can't keep the 30-year-old in the agency working her way up, how the hell is she supposed to become a CEO or executive creative director? She can't. You can't jump back in, after 20 years and say, yeah, I'm ready now. You've got to be able to get back in when you're still, learning and still moving your way up. At some point, there won't be any of those women left past 30, and then there won't be any management again. And I think part of what you're seeing is a generation before where women could kind of come back in. It just didn't seem to shut down as much as it has now. So also 2/3 of women leave the workplace and or languish in the sidelines by the time they're 35. And approximately an equal number of women and men graduate from college and enter the workforce. So there's this huge natural attrition that takes place. And so usually, when women leave the workforce like that, it's because, or languishing, it's because the conversations are a bit like what I was saying, Nancy, why don't you lead on the HBA account, and Bill, why don't you partner with me on the Super Bowl spots? And that's the kind of conversation that happens all the time. You don't notice it, but it's destructive. And so what you have to do is say, no, I want to be on that, and I have an idea, and you've got to bring it in. And little sideline, one of the things that women do all the time, and I do it myself all the time, and I have to correct myself, is I defer credit. And I think that's a great thing for women to do. I think women don't have a sense of ownership like men do. But you've got to make sure that there are times, as you defer credit, take credit for what you did and what you know. Make sure people know it. Most women, including myself, thought, if I do a good job and I work hard, somebody's going to notice. Somebody's going to give me a raise. It doesn't happen. You have to ask for it. You have to say, I did this, I did that, I did that. I remember my very first advertising job was at Avon, Canada. And I was working as a layout artist. I was 20-something, 21. And there was a position open for an art director. All the art directors were men. It never occurred to me that they were all men. And so I thought, well, I've been here for a year. I've done a smashing good job. They're going to offer me the job, right? The promotion, why not? I'm ready to go. Nobody was calling me. And I saw like this parade of men with portfolio cases going in and out of my boss's office, and I thought, what the heck? That's a lot of people going in and out, and I haven't been called yet. So I thought, oh, he must forgot or something. So I went to the secretary and said, I want to talk to him about a promotion, and they said, she said, you what? Are you sure you have the right office? And I said, I'd like to show him my portfolio because I think, maybe he doesn't realize what I've done. So I put together a portfolio and I went into his office and I took him through it. First of all, he was aghast that I was there talking to him. And then when I put out a portfolio and started taking him through it, and my hand was shaking as I was turning the pages and everything. And he stopped me and he said, well, you're right, this is good work, and I didn't realize you did all this, but you're married, right? And I said, yeah, I am. And you have to understand this is like 70s. Yeah. And I said, yeah, and he goes, so you thinking to have children or something? And I said, actually, no, we're thinking we won't have children, but right now that's what I say. Is that why you're not talking to me about the promotion? And he said, well, yeah, and I said, you know what? I tell you what, if I do change my mind and I have kids, you'll be the second guy to know. I dare you to find a man who'll give you 9 months notice. I'm still a little pipsqueak, I'm 21, I got it. But I knew I had to fight for myself, And he goes, okay, I got the job.
Wow.
So, stand up for yourself. And then half of the women seeking on-ramps and mainstream jobs, they fail to find them. You can't get back in, it doesn't exist, the door slams and you have a big hole and it just doesn't work. So those of us who care for an elderly parent or even worse, an illness, and they find it almost impossible to get back in. And you're faced with a trifecta of, a technological chasm that advances so fast, it's so hard to keep up with if you're not in the middle of it. An advancing age and downsizing, and so most of these women just can't get any traction, and they just fade into a fog of discouragement. It's like, let's do something else. So, okay, so then I'm going to play for you a little piece because I presented.
So as soon as I got out of school, I started with the agency in LA, and I did the 80 hours a week thing. Then I freelanced for a while at some smaller places, and then a few years later, I moved on to another big shop in New York, and I was a senior copywriter running a small team there. And then my dad got sick, and I decided to take some time to help with
So when I talked with Sapient Nitro, they put this little spot together, and I remember reviewing some of the ideas originally, and this one really hit me because it felt like that really is what it feels like. You feel yourself just disappearing into that chair like you didn't even exist. And you're like, the words are leaving your mouth, and you're going like, I'm hating that I'm saying this, I'm going to do that. Another tiny little aside, when I presented at Cannes for the 50+ marketing, Ketchum had just launched a new division addressing specifically that. And so we were doing advertising for our speaker conference, and they were running concepts past me. I was, recognizing the fact that I wasn't their creative director, so I was being very political and good about it. And finally, at one point, this poster comes across my desk, and it's an older woman in a Chanel suit with like a row of pearls wrapped around her wrist, and she's going like this. and I called my partner there, and I said, I hate to say this, but does anybody over 50 work on this stuff? And she says, why do you ask? I said, because all of it's really insulting, it's all stereotypes. And I said, any woman who's over 50 will know that that's the hand of an 80-year-old, not a 50-year-old. There's a difference on how big your veins get, okay? So she said, there was silence on the other side, and then all of a sudden I got a whole new slew of stuff that was brilliant. I was like, yeah, okay, that's better. That's the reason why you need to have, a mix of age in your creative departments, because you cannot always have that 25-year-old point of view on everything that you sell. Because you know what? A large part of the buying market is over 50, and most of it are women. 80% of the decisions in households, or purchasing decisions, are made by women. And yet, almost everybody is a male who's talking to you about it. So a resume gap in life shouldn't erase your chances to live your career, okay? We all have ambitions, it's just that stuff happens. And there's gotta be a way to address this. I've lost track of what slide I'm on, but it doesn't really matter. I'm free form now. So, when I presented this idea at the end of my talk, I thought, God, I'm brilliant, just like any creative, right? It's like, I did it! And then I started looking around, and Ms. Google put me in my place pretty fast, because I realized that actually, no, Goldman Sachs came up with it. And I don't know, they're the first ones who trademarked the word returnships. But maybe somebody else did it before. But anyway, it caught like fire. And they ended up rolling out the Returnships program across the Americas in 2008. A lot of it is really happening in that industry. It hasn't really gone, further than that. So anyway, brilliant. Why didn't I think of it first? So they set the example, and others saw the advantages. So who else is in? These big names. These are like big ones. And so all these people thought, hey, this is a good idea. It's really, really big in the UK. And so a bunch of businesses started up where they specialize in doing just that. So they're doing like this type of headhunter where they're doing these marriages between associations. They're basically doing what I'm doing. They're walking around selling people into the idea. But it's still all financial. And I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, well, that's kind of weird, because if there's one business I know that could use something like this, it's advertising. So this is such a big idea, they even did a movie about it. So, why would my agency need this? You know, people have said that to me as I was trying to sell this idea in. It's like, you want to do what? And, you know, yet I can't think of an industry that needs this more. And where's my little mousey guy? There you go. Oh, there we go. And Sapient Nitro just shared why they believed in a career return path. And I think this is one of the easiest and most cost-effective ways to try out a candidate in your environment. At the end of 3 months, you can part ways with no commitment, unless you want one. And it works on both sides. All right, that's what I really like about it. So this looks familiar to everybody. This is our business model. And what we deal in is ideas. And ideas mean we have to hire people to get the ideas out of them. So far, we haven't figured out how to do it by computer yet, or monkeys. So more than any other industry, we have inevitable built-in periods of attrition. And I just want to point out that the more diverse life experiences these people have, the more diverse the ideas. So rarely do people find their way back in the same agencies who are always after something shiny and new. Maybe something we need to rethink. So more than 59% of employees in the ad industry are 25 to 45, which is pretty bad. Shoe stores, however, are a bit worse, so it's okay. All right, we're moving up there, okay? I started out in a shoe store. So the average age of a creative is 28, and the average car buyer is 56. And so this author, journalist Richard Whitman was going on that this is a problem, because how do we end up with a 25-year-old renter trying to be relevant to a consumer that's in their 50s or 60s and wielding the lion's share of the dollars? Kind of doesn't really fit. For cars, you could argue, you know, that there's like this image of youth that you always want to have, but there's a limit to that. That's a big chasm in there. So hopefully I've made a solid argument as to why it's beneficial to take a new approach to how we're basically enabling women in the industry. But by combining skills and experience, both the candidate and the agency benefit, and it's a combination that ends up evening the playing field. So it started out because I was trying to take courses, and so have a lot of my friends, and saying, well, okay, so I'm missing the technology, then I'll go take some courses, and then I'll have all that. Well, that's great. So you pay money, you go take your courses, and now I know how to do, you know, UX design. But I've never done one. I don't have one. I've got a couple of samples from my school, you know, but I have no experience. So please, will you hire me? Well, no. I have somebody who's 20, you know, who I can get, and I know that I'll get the job done. So even just getting the training isn't enough. Part of it is you need to be in a nurturing environment where you can actually use your skill in real life. You need to have a mentor, and you need to have that framework around you and the ability to create a new network, to get back into, you know, the reality of the agency life, which is a little different than being at home. And I think that immersion, along with the refreshing of skill sets or adding on of skill sets, is a big deal as to why this works. So the retrain is basically, I've partnered with General Assembly. I don't know if you guys know them. Or they're here too, yeah. And they're great. I mean, what a buzz, wonderful environment when you walk into their campuses. And so we're providing in-demand skill training. We ended up focusing on UX design for our creative candidate because, well, one, she had an interest in it, and also it's a great translation from, if you're a graphic designer or a writer, one of the things that you have is experience if you've already been in the business and you've been out. And that experience translates into an ability to look at something strategically. And so it's not just about the ideas, which, you know, as you get older, people will fault you that your ideas aren't quite as fresh and hip and whatever. But you know what? Your thinking is really solid. And that's what's missing behind the fresh, young, hip ideas. And so UX design is a great way to redirect your experience in a way that's really current in need and beneficial, and be part of the creative process. It's kind of like when you go from being, you know, an art director or writer to creative director. You're not doing that stuff yourself anymore, but you get pleasure by being able to identify something and then knowing how to make it better, and then watching that person grow as they're doing it, and then, you know, patting yourself on the back for a job well done. So your job becomes very different. And I think at this stage, you can let yourself make your job be different. I think the last thing you want to be is the oldest copywriter in the room. That's a very dangerous position to be. Use your brain, use your experience, use your life experience, use your responsibility, use your maturity, all of that to project your creativity and your love for the business in a way that's different from how you started. I'm starting to think of creative careers, of advertising, of being a little bit like being a professional sports, you know, athlete or a dancer. It's like a big flash, big burnout, and then after that you've got to have a plan B, because you can't stay in it forever. You know, it's not fair, but it is kind of how it works, and there will always be a tendency to look for the next shiny thing. So what you have to do is think forward, you know, from today. Don't think you're going to do the same thing you did when you were 20. Think about, how do you grow what you have, what you've learned, how do you apply it, and how do you make something more out of it. And the most important thing, and one of the reasons I think it's important to be in the environment, is look for opportunities. Listen, keep your eyes open, keep your ears open, say, I can do that, I can help with that, let me take that, you know. Go for stuff and stretch yourself way beyond what you think you can do. You'll be surprised at where you can get. Visual web design is another, and front-end web development. The refresh part of it, it's the internship. It's having an assigned mentor, hands-on experience, somebody right there. It's refreshing your portfolio and updating your network. Really important, because now when you sit in that room, you're not going to, you know, people aren't going to say, well, what have you done for the last 3, 4, 5 years? It's there. It's like, oh, tell me about this. Oh, it's really exciting. I was in and I, you know, learned this UX design, and then I was able to use it, and you have something really positive and great to go forward with, and it's something that people will engage with you, and you look like you're moving forward instead of standing still. And that's really, really important. No more awkward moments. The benefits for the agency, well, you get an experienced resource. When you bring in an intern, that person doesn't really know how the workplace works, you know? And so you end up sending them out for pizza, and they redo the file thing that's just been a mess for 6 years, and they go through the stock contracts and whatever. So this way you have somebody who, yeah, sure, you bring them in to do UX at an incredibly cheap rate, I might add, because they're working as an intern wage, you know? But you're getting like this highly desired skill, which, by the way, I usually talk with each agency and say, what do you need in what offices? And so we try and, you know, pick out the right mix and match. And then trained in demand, in-house talent at the cost of an intern. It's a limited engagement. Okay? It's a 3-month thing. And one of the reasons that people have hesitated, I hate to say it, bringing in an older staff person is the age thing. You know, it's like, well, what if it doesn't work with all my 20-year-olds that are sitting back there, you know? Like, then I've got this person I can't really do anything about. And so this way you get to try out somebody, and there's a 3-month contract, and at the end of the contract, they walk away, or you ask them to stay. It's like, it's really simple. You get to try it out, see if it's working in your environment, see if that person is right, and you get to see, is this where I want to be, you know? So it's a wonderful, easy way to add generational diversity and an opportunity to try before you buy on both sides. These are the two candidates that I have, that we had in, at Sapient. Rainey is a creative, and so she was laid off after 9/11, and she tried desperately to get back in. She took all kinds of courses on her own, took people out, picked their brains, networked herself to death, but it never managed to get back on staff in an agency. And Carol, on the account side, she took, you know, what she thought was going to be a nice little happy break, and ended up recovering from breast cancer instead, and couldn't get back in. Both of them were trying very much to overcome these hurdles. So for Rainey, it turned out to be the advantage that she needed. She was very well received at General Assembly. She absolutely loved the environment there, and she's 50-something. Yeah, it's hair color, girls. I keep this on purpose, just so I match my husband. She loves working with all kinds of young people. They love working with her. She feels more competitive than she did before because now she's like in the stream. So worst case scenario, if she doesn't get a job offer at the end of this, first of all, I'd be really surprised because they love her to death. She's proven that she's a hard worker. She's proven her value beyond what she was brought in to do. And worst case is she walks out of there and she's got like some fresh hot stuff, some new connections, and she's just ready to go and compete. Even if she starts freelancing, she's got new connections now that she's just made. So valuable, makes all the difference. I mean, she's so grateful, it's just a joy. Carlene Mahana was the one who jumped up and said, I'll do this. She was inspired, you know, I was talking and she kind of got carried away and said, yeah, that sounds like something I want to do. And I was so relieved because I had no idea what I was doing. And then she went ahead and pitched the program to Sapient Nitro. And the rest is history. They actually even have a candidate in Toronto now. And then I was talking to someone, a big agency network, one of the big giant ones, and you know, talking about the program. They called me, they saw me there at the 3% conference, and she finally sent me an email and said, so explain to me why I need you. And I said, actually you don't. She said, why can't I just take this and do it on my own? And I said, you absolutely can. As a matter of fact, I'd love it if you did. Because it's not about me, it's about changing the industry. And that happens one person at a time. One courageous soul that walks into management and says, I think we should do this, you know? I think this is a good idea. People who say, you know what, this makes sense for me. And also, it's the ability to bring awareness, I think, to all of you, people like you, about what the future is like and how to handle things. And just because an environment is the way that it is, it doesn't have to stay that way. I'm not qualified to do this, I just did it. You can come up with a great idea and you can just do it too. Kat had never done anything like run a conference before, and now she's global. It just takes the courage and the conviction to stand up and do something about it. So do that for yourself, and then turn around and do it for others when the time comes. Because, you know, letting somebody stand on your shoulders, especially another woman, is like the most important thing you can do. Take it as far as you can, then hand it off and let somebody else take advantage of all that. So I think we've got a great day ahead of us. I'm so excited about this. And so never underestimate the power of one, okay? One person, one action, one opportunity, one career. All you have to do is just start right here and right now. And I'm going to leave you with probably what is my favorite quote of the century.